Quick disclaimer. I do not condone harassing people on the internet over Five Nights at Freddy's of all things. I'm going to be talking about a theory that I personally disagree with in this video. By no means does that reflect how I feel about the person who made the recent video talking about it. I'm here to talk about this theory and absolutely nothing else. Okay? Okay. This video is going to be a little different from my usual ones. Gibby, of the Horror Homestead, uploaded a video recently talking about William Afton, and advocating for a theory called WillCare, or as he refers to it in the video, Will Love, which essentially means that William Afton loved his children, and that his murder spree was caused by the fact that he went mad from the grief of their deaths. His video goes as far as to say that, and this is a direct quote, "The games tell us WillCare is canon directly." It's actually one of the few times that the FNaF story is direct about something. I have a lot of thoughts about this topic, and I've been wanting to get them across for a while now. But I don't think that I could put them into words over text without coming across the wrong way, which is the last thing that I want to do. So I decided to make a quick video about it. Like and subscribe, hype up the video, yada yada, let's go. Let's start off by saying this outright. No, William Afton did not love his children. I'm saying that as plainly as possible because I don't want it to be misconstrued by anyone in the comments. I am never going to advocate for the idea that William Afton was a loving father in any regard. However, I am going to advocate for the fact that William is a bit more complicated than some people make him out to be, but we'll get into that a little later. Before that, let's answer the big question. Why does anyone think that William Afton loves his children? This mostly originates from FNaF 4, namely from the theory Will Plush. A good chunk of people think that William Afton is the person speaking through the crying child's plushie throughout the entire game. People mostly think this because of what we see in Sister Location. William has cameras set up inside of key FNaF 4 locations, has the Fredbear plushie down in the private office next to the camera feed, and even instructed Michael to, quote, put her back together, just like what was said at the end of FNaF 4. Speaking of Sister Location, another big reason that people believe in WillCare stems from Elizabeth's dialogue. Throughout the game, we hear old voice lines from Elizabeth talking about how William made a baby for her, but won't allow her to go anywhere near it. We can extrapolate that the reason William didn't want his daughter anywhere near Baby is because Baby would have eaten her, based on the fact that Baby ate her. We can reasonably say that William Afton didn't intend for Elizabeth to die. I don't think we can argue against that fact. Finally, we have what some people believe that William Afton's main motivation is for all of the atrocities that he commits, to bring his children back to life, which they believe is a telltale sign of a grieving father who loved his children. Now, for what it's worth, that would be a good narrative in another story. The issue is that we don't really have much evidence to suggest that that's what we're actually seeing in this story. Because while there is some truth to everything that I just said, you could interpret it in an entirely different way if you wanted to. Let's take the crying child's death, for example. Personally, I do believe that William was speaking to him at the end of his life. We have plenty of reasons to think so. I do think that William Afton said the words, "You're broken, I will put you back together." That said, think about it for a second. Is that something you'd say to someone that you love? If you were/are a parent and you saw your child on the brink of death, would you say this to them? I certainly hope not, because that would make you a lunatic. This doesn't sound like the comforting words you'd expect from a loving father. This sounds like a threat, a promise. I think that William Afton is saying this more so to himself than he is to Cece in this scene. This is his driving force. He's not going to grieve the death of his son, he's going to overwrite it. He's going to fix it. In other words, he's literally turning the death of his son into a science experiment. And if you think that's an exaggeration, Dreadbear is literally Fazenstein's monster. This isn't even symbolism anymore. This is Scott Cawthon taking the lore book and slamming it into your head. It's not love, it's an opportunity. It's an experiment. I believe that Elizabeth is in a similar boat. It's true that William was trying to prevent the death of his daughter, but I don't think that that means that he loved her like a normal father would. Keep in mind, while it's true that William warned her about being near Baby, he also didn't stop her on the day that Circus Baby's Pizza World first opened, which was the most dangerous time for Elizabeth to be left alone with Circus Baby. Don't you think that if he was actively trying to stop this, he would have either kept Elizabeth by his side or, at the very least, hired a sitter to watch over her? I can understand him not wanting Mike to do it after what happened to Cece, but he could have gotten literally anyone else in the world to do it. It's not like he can't afford to pay someone to do it, so why didn't he? Simple. He didn't care enough. On the day that Circus Babies was opened, I'm sure that he was much busier than usual, making sure that everything was working properly. As such, he wasn't even thinking about Elizabeth or her safety at that moment. Sure, every parent has to prioritize their job, especially on a day as important as this one. The difference is that not every parent builds a literal murder machine that was created to eat children. If William truly cared about Elizabeth, he would have tried harder to keep her alive, especially considering that he had already lost one child at this point due to his neglect. But he didn't, because at the end of the day, his business was more important to him than his daughter was. I want to touch on something else that Gibby said about these two characters, as well as Mike. He called them superfluous without WillCare, which, in simpler terms, means that if William Afton doesn't love his children, then they don't serve a purpose in the story. I don't think that this is true at all, especially because these two characters serve another very important purpose to the story apart from William's motivations, one that I personally believe to be infinitely more concrete: Michael's motivations. In FNaF 4, Michael is a pretty bad person. He regularly bullies his younger brother to tears and eventually takes it too far and causes his death. And he feels incredibly guilty for that.
Can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me. I'm sorry.
This is the start of his arc. This is the first truly low point that Michael has in this story. And because of this, sister location is allowed to happen. Elizabeth's death and the idea of him being able to put her back together gives Michael a chance to redeem himself. This is why he willingly goes down to the sister location bunker, despite how dangerous it is.
I'm curious what events would lead a person to want to spend their nights in a place like this, willingly.
Michael came down here willingly because of his guilt, because he's looking for redemption. This is Mike's one good deed, his chance to level the scales again. And this is very important for the story, because he is the main character. William Afton, despite being the most iconic character in the series, is not the main character of this story. He's not the one that we're following throughout the first 6 games, questioning why he'd come back to these horrible places to work lethal graveyard shifts. It's Michael, and this is his motivation. He keeps coming back because he has all of that guilt, and he wants to right his wrongs. He wants to atone for what he did. And after his one good deed of putting Elizabeth back together, his driving motivation is to find his father.
There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you.
Speaking of this, let's talk about the fact that William sent his last remaining child down into the sister location bunker. You know, the bunker filled with literal death machines that are trying to kill him night after night and ultimately scoop out all of his insides and wear him as a skin suit for an unknown amount of time. Yeah, that's not something a loving father would do. Especially considering what happened the last time one of his children was left alone with the fun times. Gibby says that since Michael was down here for such an important task, literally putting Elizabeth back together, that surely he thinks that Michael won't be in any danger down here. I can't understand how that would ever be true. William literally built these things to be death machines, and I think that if he really cared, he'd do it himself. It's not like he's doing much else at this point in the timeline. I'm fully of the belief that the reason he isn't down here himself is because he either doesn't care enough about Elizabeth to do the hard work for her himself, or because he knows that the Fun Times would try to literally murder him. He knows the risks, and so he's sending his son down there to risk his life instead, because I'm pretty sure that he has very little love left for his son post-83. I struggle to say that he outright wants to kill Mike, though, considering what he says when it happens on FFPS.
Bittersweet, but fitting.
I don't think that William actively takes joy in killing Michael, and I don't think that he was happy about his younger children dying either. But the fact that he called it bittersweet tells me that he's not entirely beat up about it. There's also the fact that, he did it. It's not an accident to Pizzeria Simulator. If he gets to Michael and kills him, that's entirely intentional. Keep in mind, Scraptrap is a fan name for his pizzeria simulator iteration. In the credits, he's just called William Afton, and in UCN he's called Afton. If Mike dies in Pizzeria by Afton, then William definitely intended for that to happen. On that note, I'd like to take a moment to properly talk about William's characterization in this series. If I had to sum him up in one word, it would be narcissist. He is egregiously full of himself and regularly plays himself up to be far more important than he actually is. This is shown to us at every possible turn, unlike his supposed quote-unquote love for his children, which you need to make a lot of interpretations to say. I mean, let's take a moment to really think about it. If William truly was a loving father and this love was shown to us throughout his actions, none of his kids would have died the way that they did. All three of them were in life-threatening scenarios for no real reason, and William's neglect is a big part of that. If William was a part of the crying child and Michael's lives during FNaF 4, the bullying wouldn't have been so extreme. He would have been there to stop it. Keep in mind, we can see him in the very building that some of the worst bullying happens in. It's not like stepping in would have been too big of an inconvenience. And again, in the case of Elizabeth, all he had to do was either keep her by his side at all times, or just hire someone else to do it. Neither of these would have been too inconvenient for him. What this tells me is that his children, all three of them, are an afterthought in his mind. We don't have many voice lines or cutscenes to properly characterize him, sure, but we have a lot of actions, and we have many cases of cause and effect. These are what characterize William in these games. Now, this is just talking about how he is in the games, because that's what Gibby wanted to focus on for his video. Going off of his actions, I cannot reach the conclusion that he is a loving father by any means. I can definitely believe that he was angry when his kids died, sure, but we have no apparent reason to believe that this extended any further. Even if we say that the death of his children is what made him do some of the terrible things that he did, that doesn't make him loving. It makes him mad. Again, that's only discussing the characterization of him that we get from the games. If we were to include his characterization from the other continuities as well, then this wouldn't even be worth making a video on. Let me explain. First of all, let's get this out of the way. Gibby says that William Afton is characterized differently in the games compared to the novels and the movies. He's wrong about this. Let's start by talking about his characterization in the novels. I'll be the first to admit that I am not extremely knowledgeable on the novels, but my editor has read them before and knows a lot more about them, so she gets all the credit for this segment. When it comes to the novels, we can split William's characterization into 3 different eras, because the way that he acts evolves book by book based on the circumstances that he's faced with. We have Dave from the Silvereyes, which is his quote-unquote normal self. We have Springtrap from the Twisted Ones, after surviving the Springlock failure. And we have William from the Fourth Closet, where he's tasted death and is much more frail. For the most part, a lot of the core personality traits remain the same between these 3 iterations of him. He's always arrogant, overconfident, and obsessive. As Dave in the Silvereyes, he's at his pettiest and most sadistic. He's only doing most of what he does because he gets a twisted kick out of it, but his obsession with Henry is still a very major part of him. Then, as Springtrap in the Twisted Ones, he's a lot more boastful. He's treating things a lot more like a game, and really talking himself up. He's on a power trip where he truly thinks that he can do whatever the hell he wants, whenever the hell he wants to. This is also when his specific obsession with Charlie kicks into gear. In the first book, he kind of just stumbled upon her and didn't go crazy over it. But now he's obsessing over her, and wondering how she's here when he deliberately killed her when she was a child. Finally, we have his characterization as William in the Fourth Closet, where he's easily at his most complex, despite his goal being as simple as it's ever been. He wants to be a robot. He wants to be immortal. He's looked death in the face before, and now he is absolutely terrified of it. He wants to live forever, just not like this. As a result, his obsession with Henry, and by proxy Charlie, has been enhanced. He has a new goal now, and he's absolutely desperate to reach it. In addition to this, his overconfidence has been tuned up to 11, where he can't even process the idea of the robot/ghosts disobeying him. He truly believes that, despite his broken body, he should be seen as the most dangerous thing in the room at any given time. Rather than being sadistic at this point or making a show of it, he's entirely focused on his end goal. During the events of the fourth closet, he literally fills a syringe with remnant and injects it directly into a living person's heart. This isn't particularly out of sadism. He's doing it entirely because he wants to know what would happen, and refers to what would happen to his test subject's life as trial and error if he were to die. This is a science experiment to him. Everyone around him is just a subject. We also get some looks at what he was like in the past. He would actively ignore his daughter Elizabeth because all of his mind space went toward obsessing over Henry's work. It got to the point where he literally struck her for distracting him, even when all she wanted to do was share her schoolwork. And we can get a pretty good look at what his actions did to his daughter in this story. Due to William's abuse, Elizabeth lashes out at the object of William's obsession. Despite all of the horrible things that he's done, Elizabeth is still convinced of William's brilliance and still loves him. She knows that, in her father's eyes, she is not enough. She can't help him reach his end goal, and because of this, she lashes out. She feels helpless, and feels jealous of Charlie because William is obsessing over her instead. This gets to another big point of William's characterization throughout all continuities. He is a terrible father. He's a father in all three of these continuities, and he's abusive in all of them in some way, shape, or form. Speaking of the third continuity, let's talk about how he's characterized in the movies now. Like in the books, he tries to come off as a lot more put together in his regular state. As Steve Raglan, he's fairly unassuming for the most part. You can tell he's got a couple screws loose, sure, but he comes off as a relatively normal person. However, when he puts on the Spring Bonnie costume, that changes. He gets a lot louder and becomes a lot more boastful. He literally starts yelling about how he killed Mike's brother, and how he's going to do the same to him. Symmetry, my friend, and whatnot. This is something that we see from him in all three continuities. He's a very different person when he puts the suit on. He feels a lot safer, a lot stronger. We can see that with how he acts in The Twisted Ones, how he's showboating at the end of the first movie, and how he stops being afraid of the ghosts at the end of Follow Me in the games. If I had to take a guess, I'd say that this more showman-esque personality that we see from Springtrap in The Twisted Ones will be present in the FNaF 3 movie. Now let's talk about how he treats his children in the movies, Vanessa and Michael. We all remember the infamous scene in the second movie where he preaches WillCare at the top of his lungs. He's saying that he cares, sure, but we know how Vanessa feels about this. We know how he shows this love that he's swearing to. No matter what he says, he's still extremely abusive, which is very clear with how Michael speaks to Vanessa. He literally says that the two of them, quote, belong to him, and that they, quote, will always be his. He's so screwed up in the head that he literally cannot imagine a world where he doesn't follow his father's orders, and actively thinks that Vanessa should be doing the same. Again, it's abuse. It's portrayed differently, sure, but it's still definitely abuse. So, in all three continuities, William Afton tends to pretend like he's not a crazy person publicly, but as soon as he puts on the Spring Bonnie mask, he is a lot more boastful, almost as if a switch flips in his brain, like he's accessing a personality that he usually keeps under lock and key. He's also abusive toward his children in all three of these continuities, physically striking Elizabeth in the novels and making her base her own self-worth on what she means to him, practically brainwashing his children in the movies and making them think that belonging to him is their only purpose in life, and neglecting his children in the games, allowing them to die because of his inaction, and literally sending his son to an underground bunker filled with death machines. The circumstances of William Afton across the three continuities are all different. That much is undeniably true. However, I fully believe that if you took one version of him and put him in a different continuity, nothing would really change. I think that he's a constant force in this series. He's an abusive narcissist in all of them. Besides, we've been using alternate continuities to inform us about characterization since those continuities began. If you disagree with that idea, then I don't think you should be able to call Henry's daughter Charlie in the games. Make up your own name for her. Henry's daughter in the games is named Cassidy. Go open Twitter and @Shizuhei and tell him that that's what you think. right now. Actually go do that. It'll be really funny if he wakes up to 100 Cassidy puppet believers and has no idea why. Don't even tell him that I sent you. Pretend that I don't exist. Just say, I'm a Cassidy puppet believer, with the prayer emoji. He'll be so confused, it'll be hilarious. Go do that right now. Literally, pause the video and do it. Why haven't you done it yet? Hurry up. Go bother him. We've spent a lot of time talking about William Afton's characterization by now. So, to cap it off, I want to take a moment to let my internet-educated ass try diagnosing William Afton with something. An antisocial personality disorder, bordering on psychopathy. That's not a joke. It's not me throwing out random buzzwords for dramatic effect. Nothing of the sort. This is something that I think William Afton would legitimately be diagnosed with if he were a real person. William Afton is extremely manipulative. We've talked about how much that applies to alternate continuity versions of him, but you can see a bit of that shining through in the emails we can read in Secret of the Mimic as well. He also has a lack of regard for the safety of others, which is very easily provable by the fact that he actively puts his employees into springlock suits, literal walking death traps. And finally, he has an extremely inflated sense of self-worth. He thinks that he's the coolest and most well-put-together person of all time. You can see an in-game example of this through his Pizzeria Simulator dialogue, where he states that he willingly entered a trap just because he thought it would be interesting.
What a deceptive calling. I knew it was a lie the moment I heard it, obviously, but it is intriguing nonetheless.
All of these traits, and some more that he has, are very commonly associated with an antisocial personality disorder, or more specifically, sociopathy. This is not to be confused with psychopathy. That's something a bit different. Psychopaths are a lot more calm, collected, and emotionally detached. They lack fear and aren't prone to emotional outbursts. You can see a prime example of William's fear in FNaF 3's Follow Me, where he gets so scared by the ghosts that he panics and jumps into a springlock suit, only for it to crush his body and leave him there to rot. I can't say for sure if that's because the suit was wet from the leaky ceiling, or from him just putting it on wrong, but if he were calm and collected in this scene, then I fully believe that this would have never happened to him. Before going on, I'd like to state once more for the record that I am not a trained medical professional. I did my own research, yes, but by no means did I go to school for this or anything of the sort. This is the culmination of me doing about an hour or so of research into this. I'll leave my references in the description if you're interested in seeing everything that I saw for yourself. Though, for what it's worth, we consulted a mental health professional with a degree in mental health counseling and social work, and asked her to diagnose William Afton with the information that I provided in this video. Her diagnosis of him was that he is a psychopath, as well as a narcissist. I personally trust a mental health professional more than I trust myself after an hour or so of research, but please feel free to come to your own conclusions. You might have picked up on the fact that she also diagnosed him as a narcissist, which is something that I referenced earlier in this video and fully agree with. I personally thought, as someone more familiar with the series, that he is more of a sociopath than a psychopath, but far be it from me to disagree with an educated woman. What we do agree on, however, is that he is definitely a narcissist. Generally speaking, narcissists are identified and defined by the presence of at least 5 of the following 9 criteria. A grandiose sense of self-importance, a preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success or power, a belief that he is special and unique and can only be understood by those who are equally unique, a need for excessive admiration, a sense of entitlement, exploitative behavior, a lack of empathy, envy of others, arrogant and haughty behaviors. If you've been paying attention so far, you might have noticed something. You could argue that William Afton suffers from all of these. And I don't think that this started after the death of his children either. These signs of narcissism are present all the way back in the 1970s, with Secret of the Mimic's emails and his overall treatment of Edwin Murray, which is the earliest time period we have access to. With that in mind, I personally subscribe to the theory Will Narcissist. While I don't think that he loves his children by any means, he might believe that he does. I don't think that he actively wants to cause them harm, with maybe the exception of Michael, who he does directly harm by sending him down to the cyst-location bunker, and outright trying to kill him in Pizzeria Simulator. As a quick aside, Gibby says that this theory sort of falls under the same umbrella as WillCare, but I kinda just don't get why. I'm not saying that he cares about his children at all, just the opposite really, so I don't understand why he would try to frame this as otherwise. I don't hold this against Gibby because I do think that quite a few people do jump to conclusions, but I sincerely hope that anyone that's watched the video up to this point understands that I don't think William Afton loves his kids at all, and any affection that he does have for them is inherently twisted. You can argue that he loves his kids in his own way, and I wouldn't entirely argue against you. I mean, he does outright say that he loves Vanessa in the second movie, but he definitely doesn't love his kids like a normal father ever would. We're approaching the end of the video now. There's just one more thing that I want to say in regards to Gibby's statements. I've done my best to remain as respectful as possible because I don't think that it's right to clown on someone because of their theories. And I expect all of you to do the same. This goes doubly so on a video that's going to get a few thousand views or more. But there is one thing in Gibby's video that I really need to harp on. Here's a direct quote. "The reason I lean more towards Will Love than Will Trophy is because Will Trophy requires more evidence. The burden of proof is on Will Trophy." Disregarding what theory he believes in more between the two options, I think that saying that one theory is more likely than another because it requires less evidence is really weird. I think it's fine when theories are complicated. I mean, this entire series is complicated. For some reason, there's an uproar of people coming out and saying otherwise, but I just don't agree, man. I think the series gets pretty goddamn confusing most of the time. Anyway, that's all I had to say. Thanks for watching. This video was meant to be a short little rant, but then I started thinking, which led to me and my editor doing more research, and then I wrote more, and yeah, it ended up a pretty long one. Somehow, this is the fastest I've worked on a video in years though, which is hilarious and concerning. Though, honestly, this was still pretty low effort on my part, and maybe my editor's as well. I told her to be chill about this, at least, but I think we ended up with something pretty good regardless. If you're interested in seeing more videos like this, be sure to let me know in the comments. And while you're at it, like and subscribe to the channel. I had a lot of fun trying to dive into the mind of a character in a series that is very scarce with character moments, all things considered. Anyway, I'm out of here. Take it easy.